have such sights to show you.
Hello everybody, welcome to the Four Dead Losers podcast. We're the Four Dead Losers. I'm Ramito.
Adam. Justin.
And Amanda, unfortunately, is feeling a little ill, so it's just going to be the three of us today. Go ahead and leave a comment wishing her a speedy recovery. Woo! Today we're going to be talking about Night of the Living Dead. Adam, this is your pick. Non-spoiler thoughts?
I thought it was a really good movie. I think it has like a lot of impact on horror, the horror genre in general. Like it hits a lot of tropes in its like original form. So it's just kind of like, it's weird. It's kind of fresh because it like the way they do it is just well done because it's just a simple story, simple action, simple things happening. I mean, I just love older media. So this movie is really fun for me because it is that type of old media. So I really enjoyed it.
Mm-hmm. Rating out of 10?
Say 9 out of 10.
9. That's crazy.
Good. Justin?
Yeah, it was good. It was good. It's obviously a little dated, but you know, it's a product of its time, so you kind of got to watch it through like their eyes. But I think it was pretty good. Overall, everything's still going on with everything that they had. I still enjoyed it. There was some parts that still got me. I was like, oh, but dang, that's crazy. But yeah, I enjoyed it.
Rating out of 10?
Say like 7.
7 out of 10?
Yeah, 7.
So, not spoiler thoughts for myself. I thought it was good too. You can definitely see that that this was the start of the whole zombie genre, right? And you can see it like everybody's in the farmhouse, just like in The Walking Dead. Like you have the different the different character tropes that show up that are kind of typical from this point forward, right? In, like zombie media. So yeah, I feel like I have an appreciation for the movie, seeing that this was, you know, kind of essentially the first.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, it actually isn't. So that was one of the things I looked up, and it is what we associate as like probably one of the main like pioneers of zombie movies. But the first zombie movie was actually in 1932. It was called White Zombie, but people were not really big fans of it. And they have to imagine this was like 30 years prior to that movie, so you have to imagine that it was like, yeah, they said it was bad dialogue, things like that, and I'm sure the technology didn't hold up very well 30 years prior to this. This was not the first of its kind, but it's held in regards like with all the tropes that this was like what they consider like what mainstream zombie movies kind of like derived itself from. So that's where it holds its its thing there. I didn't know that until I looked it up, and I was like, okay, that's interesting.
So rating out of 10 for myself, I find it a little difficult personally to like watch older movies and not like see it in today's lens. So it's kind of,
if you could tell it's dated.
It's dated, that kind of stuff. Which I mean, like, you know, if that's your cup of tea, that's your cup of tea. It's not really mine. Like, I have a hard time. Night of the Living Dead isn't the only example. Like, I have a really hard time going back and watching like the old Halloweens. Like
the 70s and 80s.
Yeah, it just doesn't click. I get it. I understand that people like watch them and like them and all that kind of stuff. It's not my cup of tea.
Too corny.
Yeah, a little bit. So Night of the Living Dead for myself, I'd probably give it like a 5 out of 10, right? There were points where like I kind of zoned out or whatever, especially in like I guess when one of the characters ends up at the house and they're going around and doing all their things.
It's slower for sure. It's a slow movie overall.
I will say though that we'll get into it in a little bit, but like a lot of the things that happened towards the end of the movie, like they caught me off guard. I was like, oh, what the heck? But yeah, so with that being said, this movie is a little bit older. It's currently in the Library of Congress, so you can go ahead and watch it for free.
Watch it free on YouTube.
On the YouTube. So you can go ahead, leave a comment, like, subscribe, all that good stuff, and you can find this video after you've gone and watched it. If not, this is your spoiler warning, so we're going to go ahead and get into it in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. All right, Adam.
Awesome, good. So I like the start of this one. Again, just like similar older movies, like they just kind of get the credits out of the way. It's just the car driving through the countryside, right? Like they do the giant long shot from the top of the hill down, which is kind of cool. And then they show the different back country roads. No dialogue in the car until they actually get to their destination, which we find out pretty quickly towards the end of the credits is the cemetery or a cemetery.
Yeah.
As they're about to get out of the car, it's basically, I mean, if you're just starting the movie, you would think maybe potentially two protagonists, but it's one of our main protagonists, Barbara, and her brother Johnny. And so they're there, they're talking about, complaining about, man, it's still daylight, and the whole like idea of daylight saving should be in the summertime and not in where it is currently.
And what do they say? They're like, it's 8 o'clock and it's still sun outside.
Yeah, and then and then Johnny complains that like, well, we still have to drive 3 hours, doesn't help us, like we're gonna get home till midnight. And so they just have a bunch of back and forth dialogue that just plays into the fact that they're there to drop off a wreath for their father's grave. He's obviously has passed really far back in time because Johnny's kind of like whatever about it at this point. He's like, I don't even remember the guy, I don't know what he looks like, but like their mom makes them go out there and do it. He kind of like low-key is just like, this sucks, like literally we have to do this, but she gets to stay home and like we have to drive all this way. He's like, it takes 5 minutes to drop this off, but 6 hours to do the drive.
Get there and back.
Which I get. And so from there they go, they drop off the wreath or whatever, and Barbara's kind of there. They're there for a little bit, and I think that's when they have their back and forth, just little dialogue, and so it ends up coming up that. He's like, hey, why are you still praying? Let's go. Come on, we gotta get out of here.
He says, church was this morning, and then the thunder.
Yeah, the thunder. Yeah, no, it never rains. Never rains at all. But you always get the thunder there, right? And so it kind of sets the mood, right? I think that's kind of, again, a trope, like, oh, horror, ooh, like spooky weather. And Johnny brings up a story of how, like, hey, you remember, or no, it was Barbara. She goes, yeah, speaking of church, I didn't see you in church today. He's like, I don't really, I don't think it's good for me to go. I don't feel like I need to go. Remember that time I scared you in the graveyard, and Grandpa was like, that's going to send you straight to hell. And like, I was like, oh, dang, okay. Like, Grandpa didn't play, I guess. And so, and then he had brought up oh, wait, you're still scared of cemeteries, huh? Like, and so he kind of was toying with her, and then we get the classic line, we're coming for you, Barbara. And coming to get you. And she's like, stop it, no, you're leaving me alone. Like, stock, like, older media like type dialogue. Like, again, I've seen a lot of like I love older shows like The Munsters and Twilight Zone and things like that. So like a lot of this dialogue, like you're saying, is of its time. So like that whole back and forth feels cheesy, but it's just stock, right? Like it's like they overdo it sometimes, right? Like she gets so upset very easily, right? And so that's just, I think, kind of an older media thing. Like they really exaggerate, overacting. They just really over exaggerate some of this stuff to convey the thing. And so she's just like, oh, whatever. And then he's messing with her some more. And then she's like, hey, look. And there's a guy in like the distance, which again, already creepy. Like, where did this guy come from? No car. He's just in the middle of this very wide graveyard too, right? Like there's gravestones like spread out. It's not like, all together. And
there's only like one road for the entire thing.
But they're all spread out. And so, and you can tell, like, even from the distance, he's kind of walking weird, kind of stumbling. Like, and so, I guess it's of the time, they're just like, oh, haha, it's just somebody there or whatever. But they don't even, like, second guess, like, this could be troublesome, right? It's just like, oh, it's just some random guy, cool, whatever. But he's like messing with her. Oh, he's coming to get you. All right, I'm leaving, bye. And he like takes off, and he turns around, and then he magically like gets like from 30 yards away to like right in front of Barbara, and he's like, ugh. And then you see him. He kind of looks like Lurch from the Addams Family. Like he's like kind of tall. He has like this weird, like suit jacket, but you can tell it's like ripped from like the top seams. And
Frankensteinish.
Frankensteinish, and he's like going and like gonna get in her, and then Johnny's like, oh wait, he's like attacking my sister. Let me go back. And then he's like, get off of her. And then they're like fighting. And again, stock, like older movie. Like they don't actually like sitting there just throwing a bunch of punches, right? Like they're actually like just grabbing each other and like basically wrestling almost, right?
Yeah.
I feel like it's a little more realistic though,
Right.
Well, someone's like, I don't know, someone's gonna like grab you.
Yeah, but like there's no like immediate throwdown too, right? It's like,
Oh,
And it's like, you know what it is? It's because of, again, movies and media and like how, I don't know when movies really started taking off to where there was more of them consistently, but it reminds me of like stage theater, right? Like you can't just immediately like, I'm gonna throw you to the ground. It's like, no, we gotta like tussle. We gotta tussle a little bit, right? And so they're tussling, they're going for it. He gets him off for a second, and then they relock back up again. And then eventually, this is like what, like a 2-minute fight or something?
Yeah,
like, it seems like it goes on a little bit.
Yeah.
And then it ends up being the zombie ends up taking him down with him. They go down, and he bonks his head against like a tombstone. And then lightning again. So ominous, like, uh-oh, like something's wrong, right?
Yeah.
And so Barbara notices that like he's out, like he ain't getting up. And then we get the classic one more thunder, and then he turns and does the face, and we get the first look at like the real true zombie face, right? They don't say zombie, by the way, they say ghouls. But like he like turns and he has like this like almost crooked jaw, right? Like his jaw jets out, and he has like ugly teeth, and he's like again like Frankenstein or like Igor, something like Igor, Igor. And so she like looks at her, and that's the first look of like this is probably the evil thing, right? This is what we're gonna be encountering. And instead of sticking with him, he goes after Barbara. And I think this is important because it delays what is to come later, which is like, what are they going to do once they get you, right? Because you don't know that, right? Like, 'cause again, this is an early zombie movie, and again with the not so great reviews of the ones 30 years ago, and there were some other ones in between too, but like this is the first big one that people really gravitated towards. I thought that was important because it didn't rush that sequence. And so he decides, I'm going to go after Barbara and chase her. Another reason that's important, and I just kind of went down a rabbit hole of like looking up stuff, and so I didn't catch this because again this was back in the day, but like they talked about this in his later films like Dawn of the Dead and other movies that it's like a political thing of like consumerism. Like this is like the zombies represent like our like current capitalism and consumerism. Like you always want more, and that's your basic instinct is to just continually want. And so him not actually eating them like a normal zombie would, right, in movies, right? Yeah. He like goes after her, like he wants the next thing, like he's like, oh, there's something else, I want that. And so that was, as soon as I read that and thought about that, like I immediately related it to, I'm like, oh, okay, that's kind of cool. Like that's like I just want to do that. So he chases after her. She runs to the car, realizes there's no keys, because she's like as if she drove, right? And stock too, like back in the day, people would leave their car keys in the ignition. That wasn't like a uncommon thing. And so she's in the car, and the zombie too is not moving slow. Like he moves slow to start, but then he picks up some speed. He doesn't walk very coordinatedly, but he can speed walk pretty well and run.
That was weird though. That was another thing too. Going into like the later part where like they don't. That's like their thing, right? They asked them like, are they fast or not? But like, that was the only zombie that was fast, which was really weird. Yeah. But I don't know why.
Oh, I don't know. I want to. Maybe that's a good question. Like, I don't know if like maybe because it's so close and he has something there that he would want, but like you're saying later on, there's no really other ones that.
Yeah. And they mentioned that too, like
they're usually slow.
Yeah, that they're slow, but I don't know. It was weird.
It was kind of weird, but she gets in the car, she's locked in the car, and then classic. Now you're trapped, right? You can't get away. Now you're in basically a box, and this is where another one, like this zombie person, whatever, is like very like quick with his motions. Like he's banging against the window with his hands. He's doing multiple things, and then big brain move. Eventually, he's like, let me grab this brick that's over here, and just like cracks the window, and now she's like, oh no, now I'm definitely trapped. He's reaching in, and she eventually I think just pulls the parking brake or just basically puts it in drive or neutral, and it starts rolling down the hill like just precariously, like, oh, it's downhill, I'm just gonna go. And so he falls off for a second, and she's kind of like driving sort of, but of course like sideswipes a tree and gets stuck, and it's on the driver's side door, of course. And so I'm like, oh, now she's trapped again, and he's running down the hill. He's like, I'm coming to get you.
It's kind of, I thought this part with the rock was kind of interesting because like in most media they're portrayed as like
brainless.
Brainless.
I thought about that too. I was like, they're like, and even like later on in the movie they do stuff that's like humanized as opposed to like, So
I just wanted to mention that. I thought it was pretty interesting because I
Yeah.
know that I don't remember the name of the zombie movie, but there's someone that came out in like the 2000s or whatever, but like the zombies are like using freaking firearms and like playing like instruments and stuff like that.
the hell?
Yeah, I don't remember what it's called. But then you have the flip side of the coin, right, where they're like brainless.
Where they're
See, that's
brainless.
like, I think that's more like the common
The common thing
trope,
because
yeah.
they're usually referred to as they're undead and the brain dies
Yeah.
whenever you know, or turns off when you die. So trying to reactivate it, usually I think they'd say it's like I think what was it? Walking Dead had made it like it's like just a stimuli, like it's just activating your body, and its most common need is like it needs to feed, right?
Yeah.
Something like that.
And which was kind of cool at the beginning that they didn't immediately start with feeding. It was just like I'm just coming after you, like I just want to get to you, and then from there you don't know what's going to happen. So she gets out of the car.
Yeah.
She bolts down the road forever. How long we don't know. She gets some good distance though,
Yeah.
and she eventually sees a house in the distance. She gets closer, and then very important to note, she stops again at a gas pump.
Yeah.
And she sits there for a bit looking at the house, turns around, and then, old guy doing his thing, like in different areas, sees her, kind of, but he's still chasing her, and she eventually bolts and gets into the farmhouse, is what they consider it. And she gets in there and, like, basically tries to hunker down, finds a knife. That's when she I guess we finally get to our main stage of the entire movie, which is this farmhouse, and kind of kicks everything into motion of like what is going to be happening from that point forward. She tries the phone. Obviously it's not working. The zombie eventually makes his way there. Again, this is where brainless activity. He's just confused. He's just kind of walking around, looking around, like he knows and probably feels that she's there, but doesn't know what to do. So, like, again, like, it's kind of weird that they have some things that, like, they adapt to, and then other things that they don't. Like, at one point, too, he, like, runs into the clothesline, and he's like, he, like, gets mad at it. He's just like, what is this? Which is kind of funny. And so, at this point, she's just kind of in there. She's walking around. She sees, again, the place kind of messed up. She tried the phone. Nothing happens. And they do a weird sound. I thought, like, I didn't know if that was to signal, like, the dead dial tone.
Oh, yeah. It was
like a ooh, ooh.
Yeah. It was like, I recognize that, too. It was weird. It was a weird sound.
Almost like a sci-fi sound.
Yeah. I recognize that, too. It was a weird sound they used, but I thought it was...
I don't think that was their intention, but maybe it was. I don't know. But that was definitely something that was interesting. And then she looks outside again, and then somehow it's nighttime already. Like, maybe it's because it was already daylight savings, 8 o'clock. But it got dark really fast. Like, there was no, like, I guess back in those days you couldn't really do dawn very well. It was either night or day. Like, there's no in between. So it's nighttime, and she sees him, and she's like, oh, what the heck? And so she's freaking out, right? She's like, oh, that thing's out there. Like, oh my God, what am I going to do? So she eventually just decides, like, okay, let me just go upstairs. We finally get, this is the first dead, like, indication of, like, something's really messed up.
It was a jump scare.
And it was a jump scare. It's basically, she looks up, sees something on the ground, and it gets a close-up of, like, a ripped-off face. It's just like a skull with teeth in the eyes.
And that looked like good.
Yeah,
creepy.
for like the times, I was like, damn, that was actually pretty ugly, And
I thought that was really cool. And then that's when she decides, I'm going to run out. And like, I almost like she, like her senses of like, I need to get out of the house kicked in versus like, there's a guy out there trying to get me. So she just runs out the house, like caution to the wind.
I guess to play devil's advocate, she sees a dead body in the house, like that skin, like there could be something in the house that's worse than what's out there, you know?
True, yeah,
so,
fair.
I'm just saying, I don't know what I would have done in either situation either. Like, you're kind of cornered in that point, but I don't know.
Yeah, that was definitely creepy. Like, I was like, oh crap. And so she runs out, and she gets blinded, right? Like, immediate headlights in the eyes. She's like, oh, it's so bright. And the constant cutting back and forth between the lights in her face. And then all of a sudden, like, Ben's just there. Or the other protagonist that we learned, Ben is there, enters. And he, like, grabs her and, like, takes her into the house and locks the door. And so that is our second introduction of really what we consider our two main protagonists of the movie. From here I think we kind of get like the real start of like them trying to do the thing right of like now we need to settle in and try to buckle up and figure out what's going on, because she wasn't really trying to figure out, other than like trying to figure out how to like just get away from that guy, is Ben coming in is entering as the calm mind of like, we need to get things in order. He's like the order person. But yeah, the headlights, by the way, were him coming in on a truck. So like the headlights of the truck were what blinded her like in the front of the house. Which was interesting that he went to that farmhouse and just stopped there immediately. I think it's because he saw the gas.
I'm pretty sure it's because of the gas tank.
Yeah, because he brings that up almost immediately.
Like every chance he gets.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I get.
Yeah, so he comes in, tries talking to her. She's a little disheveled, right? Like she can't really communicate very well. Like she's in, basically they said it's shock, catatonic state was I think the word a lot of people use. But he asked her like, hey, the gas pump, does it have a key? Does it need a key? And she's just like, oh, what? Like, so confused. And I thought that was pretty interesting that, again, this is kind of where she starts playing into the... Barbara doesn't really do a whole lot for a lot of this movie. She's just kind of like the crazed person, right? She's the one that just can't handle the situation. She doesn't know what's going on. Later on, he tries the phone, figures out, I guess you probably already tried that, and she doesn't say anything, of course. And so he looks out the window again. He sees 2 zombies. And so he asks her, he's like, hey, like, are there just 2 out there? Like, I can handle these 2. I can take them out, but I need to know if there's more. And he keeps on asking her, and she freaks out. She's like, I don't know. Like, he just basically, like, going into a thing. He's just, all right, whatever. I'm going to deal with these 2, right? So he has a tire iron. Like, that's his weapon of choice from the get-go. And he basically just, like, goes outside and kind of one-on-one them, right? And just takes out one, takes out the other one, and, like, has, like... The way they do the shot is basically once he gets him on the ground, they just show him, and you can just hear the thud of it hitting, like almost like the ground. It sounds like, right? It's like, and obviously of the time, right?
Yeah, there weren't really much like sound effects then. Like, I guess like at least.
Damien Leone wasn't there. Can you imagine Damien made that movie now? Like,
you should pitch it to him.
I should pitch it to him.
To remake it, To remake
with your boy as like Ben or something. He's
the zombie. He's like the boss zombie.
The boss zombie.
Yeah.
Alright, so yeah, I mean, Bane basically takes out those zombies pretty easily. There's not a whole lot of fighting back. I mean, he basically just does the same, always like a takedown and then a head smash, which is interesting. Once he does that, he basically is heading back in, but as he's doing the act of taking out those 2 zombies, we noticed that a third one, because again, that's why I kept on asking, do you know how many are out there? A third one gets behind the house and opens the back door. It starts coming from Barbara, who again is not paying attention. She's just there on like a sofa couch. Crying. And, I don't know what she's doing. Barbara is just
like in a trance in the movie.
She's basically a zombie in this. She is the zombie in this movie. And so that zombie is just slowly moving, right? He's taking his time. Ben gets back in there and sees it, and he like physically like grabs her. He's like, get out of the way. And so they fight and tussle. He loses the tire iron, kind of sets up the maybe Ben might not make it. And Barbara, of course, doesn't do anything. She just sits there in the corner staring at him. He eventually gets the tire iron, flips him over, and bashes him in one more time. So he took out basically 3 zombies in the span of like 2 minutes. He's basically doing the work. It's impressive. I mean, he's pretty good. He's established himself as like the main protagonist at this point, like basically being the leader. And once he does that, he basically goes and decides like he needs to take that body out and burn it.
And he mentions like they're
afraid of fire. He mentions they're afraid of fire. Doesn't go into detail about it, but knows that like they're afraid of fire. He ends up pulling it out and essentially douses it, lights it on fire, and like the zombies.
As more come, right?
As more come, and I will make a note before he did that. What was important too?
They smashed the headlights.
They smashed the headlights
because that was another thing too. I was like, huh.
Well, and that's why at first I go because when this movie came out again, I don't know how big the zombie trope was of like having really any knowledge of like what their weaknesses and strengths are. But to me, if you saw this for the first time, it's like, so is there like their eyes don't react to light very well. Like if it's too bright, does it mess with their pupils too much and they don't know how to react to it? because the headlights, they break in. They get rocks again, like they grab stuff and break it, and that's not a big thing in most zombie movies of them grabbing stuff to use.
I thought they were breaking it as like a tactic. That's what I thought. I didn't know they were breaking it. Because were they on? I don't think they were even on.
The headlights were on. Yeah,
they were still
the
on.
headlights are still on. Yeah, he left it. Honestly, I think he left the truck on, which was dumb.
Like,
He's like complaining about gas. Yeah, he's wasting and the battery dies. Wastes the battery and the thing. But yeah, as he does that and it goes up in flames, they back up, and again, eyes, like you can see, like they turn their heads, and so they don't like it. And some of it I think has to do with light, but I'm sure they're afraid of it, because that was a big Frankenstein thing too, right? Frankenstein didn't like fire, and he was essentially the OG undead. Yeah,
that's true.
So that makes a little bit of sense there.
Well, I think it makes sense because there's only really two. Like you find out later, there's only really two ways to kill them, right? And it's being, taking out the head or
lighting them over,
or like getting burned. So that would make sense, right? Like instinctively, like that's the two things that they're gonna get away from. Obviously, like.
Oh, you know what? Yeah.
Right.
Like they see like bright light, and they don't register it as light bulbs. It's just
like
fire makes light.
Yeah, fire. Yeah, and then like that. I'm pretty sure they wouldn't. I don't know. I don't know how zombie what's the word? Zombie mentality works, but I'm pretty sure zombie mentality. But I would assume like they have some form of instinctual like thing to stay alive.
Yeah.
Right, stay alive. So they would back away from anything that would potentially re-kill them.
Right.
Yeah.
Re-undead them. I don't know. Re-dead them.
Re-dead them. Red Dead Redemption.
Red Dead Redemption.
But yeah, they that was kind of that was interesting, because again they give you things, but they don't really talk about it, right? Because again, like we said, Ben mentioned they don't like fire, but didn't go into detail why.
Yeah.
Until here in a bit. They get back. He finishes that, gets back in. They kind of get the door shut, and so he goes to the kitchen immediately, finds nails, and he tells Barbara, "Hey, go find wood, whatever you can. We need to board up these doors and windows, so these things don't get in." Because at this point, now they really know that they're there, and they need to completely shut it down, right?
Yeah.
And so basically, he tells her to go do that, goes through the house, and kind of starts getting frustrated as he's doing stuff, and she's just standing there, and she's like, "Look, we need to do stuff, blah, blah, blah," and she's just standing there ugh. And then he calms down and is like, "Okay, look, if we're gonna get through this, you gotta help me. I can't do this by myself." And so she ends up walking away and then does nothing for a little bit. She finds a music box and is messing with it while this man has taken down an entire 2 doors and ripping the cabinets apart, right? Ripping the bottom of the cabinets. So he's doing all this as she's messing with the music box, which doesn't play a role later on down the road. I don't think so. She eventually goes to the fireplace that's right next to it and finds 2 little pieces of wood.
Yeah.
All right, I did my part. And then she goes back in the kitchen, and when she does that, they basically, I put worst group partner ever. She basically, Ben's doing all the work, and she grabs 2 things. She's like, "I did my part. I'm good."
I'm good. I showed up.
I should get my A for the group. She's the terrible group partner in college.
That's fucking bad.
Even when it gets to the point where she comes in there, she puts it down in the fridge, and Ben is hammering down the back door that the first zombie got in with another door.
Yeah.
He it's just so funny. He boards the door with another door. She holds the one side to hold it up for a second, and he only does his side, and then she just lets go after 2 seconds. Doesn't even really help him.
Yeah.
But he ends up basically boarding up that room, and then it quick changes, basically scene change to their coming out, and he's like, "All right, I boarded up that entire room. It's secure." It's well, it's not the only room in the house, but okay.
It's not the only door.
Yeah, not the only door either, but it's it's whatever. So they come out, they get into what I think they're going to sit down and do sit down and maybe chill for a second, but no, he rips the tablecloth off the dining room table and starts taking that apart. And this is where we get into some of my favorite things about older media, which is the old school long monologue where they're going through and giving you some of the exposition or background or lore or whatever, and that's just I think that's one of the things they really hammered home. Again, that's kind of like theater, right? It goes back to theater. you're talking a lot, you're doing a lot, you're giving a lot of information, and this shows your chops of like, can you get me as the listener invested? And yeah, I mean, he basically goes into a somewhat lengthy monologue about, hey, do you know this diner down the road? And I was there. And this is where he reveals how he knows they hate fire. And he talked about how he found the truck at this diner, which I'll talk about some timing things in a second. We were talking about it earlier. It's kind of funny. And he said in the truck he was listening to the radio, and they were talking about stuff. And as they were talking about stuff, there was a scene that happened. And one thing I did skip over that I'm mad about, because I didn't have my notes pulled up at first when we started. The big thing that I think was important at the very beginning that they really hammered home that we missed was that before they exited the car to go to the graveyard, Johnny and Barbara, the radio came on, but it was like it finding itself. Like it wasn't him necessarily messing with it. It was like the radio messing with itself. And I guess it was on a radio station, but it wasn't picking up. And then it kicked on, and the radio guy was like, "Hey, we're sorry for the interruption, blah, blah, blah. We have very important news," and then then he turns it off. Like so, we would have gotten probably some important information, and they probably would have gotten important information, but he missed it because he turned off the radio.
He wanted candy.
He wanted candy. He never got candy. He never got candy.
This is a 45-year-old man asking for candy.
Man, he was snacking. He did a 3-hour drive. Wouldn't you want candy after a 3-hour drive? And so in the monologue, he talked about he was listening to the radio station, and as he was listening to it, he knew something. They were talking about things were not right, something was wrong, and he saw a truck basically coming down the road, like not very controlled, but it was moving, and there was like about 15 zombies on it, and
they're like hanging on to it.
They're hanging on to it.
Yeah. Didn't Ben say it was a gas truck?
It's like a gas truck, like a tanker. And so it like basically just kept on going, and he almost said, I almost hit it. So I was like, so were you in the car just sitting there or driving? I was a little confused by that. But basically I guess he was driving because he said he almost hit it, and he had to veer out of the way because the truck was just going. Like there was no semblance of control. And then he said he saw it go into basically a gas station and like just plow into it, and the zombies were there. And he's like, I didn't even know if it was going to explode, like this and that and the other. And then it turns out it does end up catching on fire and exploding, and the zombies like back up from it, and like they're freaking out. But he's like, the driver was in there screaming, and then when the fire happened, then it was like, I don't hear it screaming anymore because he's essentially dead. But like the zombies backed away for as much as they were around that thing and wanted to be on it. As soon as it caught fire, they immediately dispersed. But he was like, at this point there was a bunch of them. And then he went back to the diner to get help, but at that point it was completely surrounded. I think the word he used was enshrouded or something. Encircled. Yeah, there was. And basically he knew that like it was over for them. Encircled. That's right. He did say encircled. He said it was about 50 or 60 of them. He didn't hear screams anymore, so that there were people at the diner at the time. But now he couldn't hear anything. It was just silent. So he knew that, like, I'm pretty sure I'm alone. Like, there's nobody around. Mm-hmm. Everybody that was around is no longer. And so he decided to basically just drive off. He got surrounded by those same zombies. He plowed through them and talked about how they didn't move. Yeah. They were just there. So, like, brainless activity. Yeah. They're just there trying to get what they want with no regard to, like, what's happening to them. Yeah. So that was kind of important. And that kind of cued the end of his monologue. At this point, he's taken apart pretty much the entire table for the most part, which I'm like, dang, that's pretty good. Like, it took me a while just to put it together, let alone try to rip it apart with like hardly any tools. Did he even have tools? Just basically like pulling on it, right?
Strong.
He is strong. He's got the strong hand. And then Barbara goes into her monologue, which is completely scattered, right? And she's just going off all over the place. She's talking about Johnny and how they showed up and how they were complaining about not having candy. And then she starts kind of devolving a little bit because she's starting to realize that, like, Johnny, he's still out there, and like we need to go help him. And like as she's doing this, and she's like before this, she's like, oh, it's getting hot and this and that. Oh, yeah. And she listened to Ben give this whole like 5-minute monologue. She's only a minute into hers, and he's like, I think you need to calm down. Yeah. And I was like, dude, I'm like, what? Like gaslighting her almost? Like, you need to calm down. And then she starts freaking out more, and then complaining again, and some more. And he says again, like, look, you need to calm down. And she's not. And then she brings up that, like, oh no, we need to go back. Like Johnny's still out there, because she didn't really think that he was dead necessarily. She just knew that like he got hurt.
Yeah.
Because I mean, he just hit his head. Like we don't know that he's dead. I mean, anybody can just bonk their head, right? He could get knocked unconscious. So nobody knows really what happened there. So she's like, we need to go out and get them. And she starts like grabbing him, like because she's like, we need to go. And so she tries to get outside the door, and he stops her. He grabs her, and so she like basically pulls away, she slaps him, and then he, in 1960s fashion, he slaps her. She like kind of pushes back. And she like, oh, what? Like, kind of like shocked. And then, no, but there's like a 10-second delay, and then she falls unconscious, and then he catches her. I was like, that is the greatest, like, acting ever. Like, gets slapped, has to take it for the second, and then, oh, wait, I need to pass out. And then, like, passes out. So he catches her, puts her on the couch, which I thought was kind of, you know, stock, older media. Like, that's a classic thing, right? Like, of... You know, just the like they never really punch. They never really punch. It's always like slaps.
I thought it was a punch.
No, it was a slap.
No, it was a slap.
Yeah,
a hard slap. He slapped her out.
Yeah, that dude. It's
strong hand.
He pulled the.
He pulled this. But yeah, it was very. It was. Yeah, I mean, that's just stock 1960s or anything. So she says like you know that like she passes out whatever. Okay. He turns on the radio, and this is where we start getting more information. So as he turns on the radio, he's getting more facts about it, and this is another thing, I think, looking into it, that people had talked about with this movie, that it's also talked about the weaknesses probably in humanity being able to handle large-scale crisis. Like, we as a society probably can't handle anything of this nature if it were to ever happen, because there'd be too much chaos, there'd be too much happening, and then trying to get the information as this is happening is not going to be very like easy to get. So the information we're getting is all very limited, right? It's like, oh, okay, there's a mass epidemic of mass murder, and he even says these are the facts. It's like these are the facts that we know. He calls them group of assassins. Like they don't know what's going on. They just say they're assassins. You know, talk about like this is mass homicide, that they're taking out people. They look like ordinary individuals, but they're in a trance. So they use that word trance a lot. And then others described him as, and then he walks away, and then we lose it. So I think this is where we were going to get some more information, maybe about like what it is, like maybe that they're undead, but we don't, because that's what they were probably going to describe them as, and then they don't.
I thought that was really interesting too. Like for the longest time, they prolonged the whole idea of them being like undead.
Yeah.
They made it, the only, I mean, obviously, right, the movie's called Night of the Living Dead, but if you took out that title completely, you wouldn't even know like they were zombies up until they mentioned it. Like, they're ordinary people, they're just like people, like cannibals more than like, you know, almost like under, like, I thought it was interesting that they went that route.
Yeah, and I like that they, like you're saying, they delayed it, and they purposely, like, right, like as he was going to do it, just like at the beginning, and then it's like, whoop, let me go look out the window, and he looks out and sees like a mass more of zombies like kind of entering the area. He kind of comes back, and then they get more information, and they don't, you know, he basically sees the zombies enter. They describe them as monsters now at this point. Law enforcement doesn't have a clue what's going on. Again, like they don't have the structure in place to handle something like that, right? Because like, what the heck, like we never in a million years would have thought that there'd be mass, you know, this. He basically then sees that when those zombies are coming, that he needs to do something about it. So he lights the fireplace, or the fireplace is already lit, I forget, but he grabs a can of lighter fluid. He douses one of the like sofa chairs, the loungers, and then he grabs one of the legs from the dining table and wraps it in a cloth. He pours some of that lighter fluid on it, lights it on fire, takes it outside with the sofa, and he basically lights that on fire. Big giant bonfire, which really pushes that giant army of them back. So that was pretty important, and he knows that like that's going to take care of them at least for a while as that's burning, because they're not going to want to get close to that entrance at least, because I think that's the main thing, right? That's the main entrance. They boarded up the back entrance, and I don't think there's any surrounding areas that they can get to on the sides, because at least from the one side we saw of the house, the windows are kind of taller, like so.
They're a little bit.
So the only way they can get on is getting from the front patio or the back door, which I think is important to note, that like he at least the layout lends to it, right, to where they can't immediately get to them. Like as long as they have the backside barricaded and they have something limiting them getting onto the patio, they're pretty set. This is where he tells Barbara, hey, I'm gonna go upstairs. You're gonna be all right, whatever. And Barbara, I think, is now listening to the radio, and this is where they're mentioning more information. It's like, hey, bodies of victims are being devoured, and these things are like, when they examine them, they keep on calling them the K word killers, but let's just say the ghouls right now, because that's what they refer to them later as too. The ghouls like basically have human flesh in their body, so like in fact they are eating them. So they're doing autopsies of these things and trying to figure out like what's going on. That's cue in the next group of people, right? So basically, Ben slides the first corpse upstairs away, which is the thing with the skull, and Barbara hears the noise, and it's Tom and Mr. Cooper's, two males, a younger male and an older male, coming in from basically another door that they didn't think about going to.
One thing I did like about this before, like, I think it's just kind of like it was like a scene in passing where like they kind of foreshadowed like that door at one point. Like it was like it showed it, and it was like I was like, oh man, this is like another way for the zombies to get in, right? I think that was kind of their intention, right? Like they didn't know what was beyond that door, and then they
realize that that's what it is. Because and then they make noise too, right? Barbara freaks out because she hears noise and you don't know, and they just kind of emerge, right? And they come in. He sees what's going, like, over there. And Barbara kind of freaks out, right? It's like, oh crap, there's people in here. And so Ben comes downstairs because he hears her screaming, kind of freaks out. And they're like, oh, it's cool. Like I
think he finds a firearm upstairs.
Yeah, he finds a firearm.
He finds it like in a cabinet downstairs.
And rifle.
He takes it upstairs.
Yeah. Well, at this point he has it.
So he does have a rifle. He does end up getting a rifle, which is it's funny too, right? Because again, old effects, like the audio effects weren't all that great. So like it almost sounds like a little BB gun, or it's like it's like a little pop gun. But he comes downstairs like, yo, what the heck? And they're just explaining, look, we've been downstairs, and Ben's getting like immediately his first thought is he gets mad. He's like, why didn't y'all help? Like we literally have been barricading this house. You could have helped us. And they're like, oh no, we didn't hear anything. We couldn't.
Well, I thought Cooper was like, yeah, we heard y'all, but you see everything that's happening outside.
We thought they were like. He mixes up the story.
Well, but he says, because he says he's mad because he didn't come and help. He's like, well, we didn't hear anything. And then he was like, well, this, that, blah, blah, blah. And he's like, well, did you not hear us screaming? Like we were fighting people up here. We were doing all this stuff. You didn't hear any noise. And he's like, well, yeah, but like we thought it could have been those things because we heard, like you're saying, we heard some noises and we thought it was them. He's like, so you did hear noises? And they're like, he's like, you need to get y'all story straight, man. And so they're doing that, and then I think Cooper like, oh man, we got the radio. Like he's listening to the radio too. He's like, man, like we got stuff up here we can use, which was odd. So I'm like, why didn't you realize that when you first got there? Like, you know what I mean?
Well, there's something that happens before them. It's just them going back and forth about whether to stay in the city.
No, and that's what I was about to get to. They're fighting after that with the radio about like, what are we gonna do? Because Cooper, the old man, wants to go downstairs because it's safe. He can barricade it. It's it is a strong barricade, and it's a locked out basement. Like there's no other way out of that basement. It's just that one door.
The problem.
Which is interesting because most basements usually have a secondary outlet.
Like the doors that open up like that.
Usually there's a quote unquote cellar door, but not here. And which is odd because it's also a farmhouse. You would think there'd be a cellar door. And so they're arguing back and forth, Cooper and Ben. Tom, which is a younger guy, he reminds me again, stock 1960s.
I was gonna say, I think he was supposed to be like an 18-year-old or something like that. He was like 30, right? With all these muscles, right? He's supposed to be like an 18-year-old. They give him the haircut, the little kid haircut.
He looks like Zac Efron in that one movie that just came out where he's the boxer.
Yeah. Not the boxer. He's talking about the wrestler.
Iron Claw.
Iron Claw. He's like Iron Claw. He basically they're trying to figure it out, and I think eventually Ben kind of convinces them like, look, we need to stay upstairs because like we can see all the entryways, exitways, things like that, and downstairs if you go down there you're cornered. Like there's no way out. And the other guy, Mr. Cooper, is like, well, no, but it's the safest down there. We can make sure they don't get in. There's only one way to get in and out. So as long as we guard that one thing, we're good. Up here, there's too many points of entry. Eventually, Tom kind of falls into line with Ben of like, well, but they have supplies and things up here we need. We should probably do up here because we need to get up here for things like the radio and food and all this stuff that they need to take care of.
The movie's kind of a haze, actually. Like, it's a lot of, like...
Things happen at once.
Yeah, it feels like... Okay. I wouldn't say like a fever dream, that's not the right way to say it, but it does feel hazy. It feels like kind of like one...
It is, and that's what I like about like some of these older stuff, like it doesn't... There's not...
You don't remember things in like, you don't remember things in like...
You just remember the moments.
Yeah, you remember the moments. You don't remember like when they happened though. And I watched it last night, so it's like... I remember big points in when they happen, but like a lot of like the dialogue and stuff, it kind of like, it happens like, I couldn't tell you exactly at what point.
So after the whole back and forth about, we need to stay in the cellar, we need to be up here, there's supplies, blah, 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 blah. I don't remember who, I think it's either Cooper or Tom, or Tim? Tom. But one of them gets, like, they're walking by one of the windows that they boarded up and they get grabbed. Yeah, the zombies reach in and grab them, and you can say, just like you were mentioning earlier.
That was Ben. I thought Ben got grabbed.
No.
He has the gun, right? The gun's, like, pointed outside.
No, it was Tom, because Ben helped him.
The gun yet.
Ben helped him.
No, I know, but the gun was outside, like, it was, like, kind of out.
Well, because he shoots him in the chest.
Oh, gotcha.
But... well, like you're saying, you can tell because the windows are elevated,
so they can only reach
the zombies. Yeah, they can only reach, which I mean, like, whatever, right? The window's that high, and they don't display any capabilities of being able to like jump or vault or anything like that.
Dude,
so
if they did, would you freak out?
That'd be scary.
But just like you're saying, Ben puts the gun outside and shoots him in the chest, and we see that like. Yeah, it kind of like dazes the zombie, but it doesn't like do anything until he pops him in the head.
Yeah.
And then that's when the zombie falls. And then of course all the lights on the inside are on. If you're a zombie, like I guess this is kind of interesting, right? Because like if they destroyed the headlights to get away from light or whatever. But all the lights are on inside of the house, so more zombies start coming to it, or is it that they're making noise and they're attracted to the noise?
I think some of it has to do with when you see a group of them. I think the hive mind, basically in their mind, they know something's there. Something's there because they one or two there, and then they slowly start kind of converging and gathering. So like once they see movement or they see something, they gravitate towards it. Yeah, and they know what that is. I will say a side note too. After they have that whole grabbing scene, they show again another mass like. Basically they're starting to really get surrounded by these zombies, and I thought a really cool point that after they did the radio call like about them having the flesh and eating the flesh. They zoom in on one particular zombie by a tree, and it's a lady, and her face is kind of like all like kind of like ripped almost. So you can kind of tell again, like I think you're almost starting to see with more of these zombies. There's more like not almost decay. I guess in the word of decay, or like things aren't right with them. On terms of like how their skin is. She grabs like a cricket because you hear the crickets outside. You hear the
she like eats it, right?
And she eats it. So like again, that idea of like living things they just eat.
Yeah.
I've never seen a zombie eat a bug, which is kind of interesting. But again, it's that idea of like consuming, right? Consume.
So then after we get the shot of all the other zombies showing up, then there's more arguing about the cellar versus the first floor. And then Tom, at this point, I think it's pretty much like decided or whatever that Cooper is going to go downstairs, Tom is going to stay upstairs. So he calls his girlfriend or whatever, Judy, to come upstairs. Mr. Cooper goes downstairs with his wife, his kid. The daughter, we find out, is sick, right?
Yeah,
which is sick. Like us watching the movie.
We know.
In 2024, we know what's going to happen, right? But them, and this being, I guess, the second movie of its time or whatever, they don't know what's coming up. So you can tell that Cooper is really salty about the decision, right? Which is like.
Because he's like, this is where, again, Twilight Zone mind, I think of it, but it's a trope that they use everywhere, right? When we get to a situation where we're in a state of crisis, especially like a worldwide global crisis, people, they delve into their worst instincts. And so for him, I think being someone that like with how his family, maybe the family interaction, he wants to be the one in power.
Yes,
and so it's a power thing. Like he doesn't like that. He's not in control. He's in the cellar, and if he get everybody in the cellar, then he's in control. But it seems like Ben is the one that kind of has more pull, but Ben's also the one doing all the work, right?
Yeah.
And I think he doesn't like that either, right? That like Ben, like, you know, he wants to just be in control but not have to do much, versus Ben's like, I'm gonna do what we need to do to survive.
And a lot of the decisions that Ben makes aren't really the best for the group. But that's besides the point.
It's not. I mean, he's proactive, I guess.
Yeah.
But I mean,
I would say, but the thing is, I would disagree. I think they are the right decisions, because at the end of the day, if you don't know, like if you know you're stuck there and eventually you're gonna run out, I think the best idea is to like figure out if we can get a way out.
Yes.
We need to get out.
So yes. So what I meant is like the major decisions.
Oh,
the major decisions that he makes, yes, are good for the group. But once they're in the moment and things start happening, like, those sort of decisions.
Okay, so like the short.
He's a good planner, but not actually like
executing.
Yeah, he's not good at executing the plan.
Yeah,
that makes sense.
I also think can't execute them because the other people are dumb.
Yeah.
Like, being honest, you have Barbara that literally does nothing.
Yeah.
Tom kind of does stuff, but later on we're gonna find.
Old.
Yeah, but we're gonna find
do it well though.
Yeah, well, because he's a teenager.
Yeah, he's a teenager, right?
Were you gonna say something?
No, I was gonna just.
So Cooper's salty, whatever. He tells his wife, her name is Helen. So Cooper's first name is Henry, so they're both H's.
I just call him Mr. Cooper because that's what I usually refer to him as.
Yeah, so Helen finds out, or they have a conversation, and she's like, "What do you mean there's a radio upstairs?" And she gets upset with him, and then blah, blah, blah.
Because again, she's mad that he's just making decisions for them.
Yeah.
Again, just a basic bad instinct.
Yeah, and so she wants to go upstairs. Okay. Judy, which is Tom's girlfriend, she goes back downstairs. She basically switched places with Helen. Helen's gonna go upstairs, asks Judy to watch over Karen. Karen's the sick daughter, and so she's like, "Sure, why not?" So then they go upstairs. The Coopers, both of the adults, go upstairs. Tom is helping Ben with the TV.
They're getting
the phone doesn't work, but the TV does. Cool.
Yeah. I guess
I don't know
how phones work.
I don't know how it works either.
Well,
I just assume that
it's like TV cable. It's like the antennas,
Oh,
right?
because they have power. They have power, which I was like, why do you have to get the TV to work? You just turn it on. Like, as long as you tune it, like, because those are back in the day, all you had to do was just, like, turn it and you'd find it. It's not like a radio.
And of course, just Ben and Cooper being in the same room at the same time. Just,
tension.
There's a lot of tensions there, and it just keeps coming up. So they get the TV to work, and we get some more lore from the TV.
Lore.
Basically, like the important things that are being said are people are being eaten, right? Just like we've kind of been seeing for this whole time. I told you once
I was gonna say
both of them, they're both knocked out. We have the 2 dogs down here, so.
They got that dog.
They wanted to give their review.
They wanted to give the review.
They said it was boring.
They said there weren't any dogs in the movie. So
there were dogs. There were dogs at the end.
At the end, you're right.
But they fell asleep before.
So they say that the news coming from the TV, they say that the people are getting eaten. At the last radio that we heard that the president was meeting with like high-end officials to discuss what was going on and whether they were going to call in National Guard or whatever.
That was the president, huh? When they were interviewing him.
I don't know if they ever interviewed the president, but I know
they had the car with the flags on it.
Oh, I think you're right.
I was like, isn't that the president's car? Like the stock car, right? Yeah. It's like, that's so stupid.
I know they talk to like scientists and stuff like that, and there's some of the ones that they
maybe there was him then. I don't know. I just saw the flags on the car. I was like, that's corny.
And then this is where we also find out that people who recently died are coming back to life.
Yeah.
And so they're like, oh, be careful because those aren't, I mean, there may be your loved ones, but they're not your loved ones.
Yeah.
And that the military is starting to set up, I think they call them rescue stations or something like that. But
and then they start announcing places, and I think there's a place that's near them. But I will throw out there, I thought that was another key point of like, they're like, they may be your loved ones, but they're not them.
Yeah.
Which I think plays into the later on big reveal.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, I think they left that little nugget there so that you could, well, actually 2 times, right? You have 2 different instances of potentially that. Yeah, so that was cool.
I don't know the other one. Okay.
Oh, yeah, we'll get there.
And
okay.
And this is my favorite part of the movie. That I just think it's so funny that it comes in from the TV that they said that NASA had a satellite that was orbiting Venus.
Oh yeah.
And it was coming back, but on its way back, it had an unknown radiation coming from it.
And exploded in the atmosphere.
And they exploded, yeah. So, from my point of view, this is funny because, like, today, I don't know how much they knew about types of radiation back in 1968, but today we know that there's only 3 types and that you can't, there's no other types. So just to hear, like, an unknown
radiation.
type of radiation, I just thought it was funny.
It's a special radiation.
I didn't even know
This is a sci-fi movie. Technically, this is a sci-fi movie.
I didn't even know in 1968 they had the capability of sending a satellite to Venus and getting it back.
Yeah, because in 1969, the next year, they landed on the moon.
Yeah, but the moon's right here.
Yeah.
Venus is like a bazillion miles that way. What are you talking about?
That way.
That way, exactly.
I don't know, Ben.
I don't know either. They know something.
They know something.
They hired scientists to prove that.
That's
They're
true.
like, yes, this is accurate.
They signed off on it.
Just like you're saying, the rescue point gets announced. It's in their area, and Ben says that they should go to it. And I think Tom
mentions the gas tank.
That Tom says like he knows where it is.
Oh yeah.
Like
It's like 17 miles away or something.
Yeah. They mentioned like, oh, we know
because
where.
they're locals.
Exactly. Then sends Helen back downstairs just to check on Karen. Right? Oh, my daughter's sick. Okay, we'll go see what's going on. Then the TV comes back on, and I think like at this point it's like cutting in and out, right? Like we get scenes of what's going on with the TV, and then the group kind of doing whatever, milling around. But on the TV, they had mentioned that like they're doing different experiments on bodies that I thought that this was kind of messed up, but that they cut off the limbs of a corpse,
and it came back,
to life, and I was just like.
Yeah, I was like, why?
Yeah, like why? I mean, I guess right. You have to just throw stuff at the wall and see what figures it out.
I was saying if you took off the limbs, would it still?
Would it still work? Yeah, and then the TV. This is when they tell, I guess, whoever's watching the TV information that Ben already knew, that they have to burn the bodies because that'll keep them away and all that good stuff.
I think at this point too, they're also talking about the broadcast that talks about there's now like a team of a ragtag team.
I think that's later.
Okay.
I think that's later. But yes, they do say that eventually. So then Ben, we get to Ben. He's making Molotov cocktails out of like the tablecloth and mason jars. Yeah, they find kerosene. And so he's saying like, hey, we're gonna get together so we can go gas up the truck, and then Henry or Mr. Cooper, you're gonna stay here and throw Molotov cocktails outside of the window, right, to keep them off of our track or something like that. And so then Tom and Judy, Tom's like, I'm gonna go do this, and Judy's like, no, don't do it. And they have a little bit of a heart-to-heart. Of course, she's worried about him, right, because they're a couple or whatever. Mm-hmm. Okay, so they're basically formulating a plan. The women are gonna stay downstairs. Mr. Cooper is gonna be upstairs throwing Molotov cocktails at zombies. Tom and Henry are going to go to the gas to go get fill up the truck, basically. And I think at this point, they know that there's a lock on the thing, right?
Yeah, they're like,
it's not like with the kerosene.
You're right. That they found keys with the kerosene.
This is another thing. How are they driving the truck when there was no headlights? Like the torch was the only form of light they had?
I mean, like
it's dark. It's dark country road. I mean, there's no lights.
Well, it's like on the same property. I wouldn't imagine that they're too far.
But you're still driving in like the dark, you know. The farm is like the only form of light that they had. The house.
Yeah, the house that they
and it's all boarded up. Exactly. So it's like.
Aren't there a couple of lights outside of the house?
I don't remember.
Like one on the porch or something. Tom and Henry are like beating up the zombies on the way to the car. Yeah, tough guy stuff. Oh, yeah. And then Judy like sees them, right? Because the door's open.
Cooper throws the Molotovs first.
Oh, you're right.
He throws the Molotovs to get them out of the way, and then they go out.
Yeah. And then
like his throws are so weird. Like, dude, just a little arc.
And he was throwing them right next to the truck too. I thought one was gonna hit the truck. I was like, oh no.
He's gonna hit one of the people.
Yeah.
And so then Judy sees them, Tom and Ben, and she books it, right?
Yeah, she's like, I gotta go with them.
Yeah, and then
I was like, bro, yeah, exactly. I was like, no, what the hell?
This is basically the start of like the
everything going wrong.
Yeah, everything going wrong. I think Barbara closes the door, right, or something on them.
So no, Cooper does. Cooper does, because he was.
No, I
he
mean
was
to the basement.
Oh yes.
After Judy books it.
Yeah.
But then yes, you're right. They get into the car, whatever. Cooper comes downstairs, closes the.
Yeah, because his job.
That was his
He
job,
needs to lock the door.
And then so then Judy and Tom all get into the truck and they take off, going towards the gas pump, right? So then they get there and the gas pump has a lock on it.
Yeah.
No idea why. But
well, I mean, you don't want people coming in stealing your gas. Like, even back then, even though it was only like 50 cents a gallon or something.
That's a lot of money back then.
Yeah, well, like
I don't know.
I mean, I have to imagine to fill it up and it's yours. That's a good amount of money. And I mean, if you're in the country, somebody could easily just drive up and boop, like.
I didn't even know people had like.
I didn't know that.
I didn't. People know had gas pumps on their property. Well, I guess
yeah, like
they have oil, right?
Well, they have tractors and things like to do stuff. I don't know what that farm actually does. There's no like actual like
tractor
crops or anything,
yeah.
but like that's essentially that would be because where the gas pump is like a giant shed, right?
Yeah.
Like,
I thought it was a barn.
or barn, yeah, like a barn. Like there's stuff in there.
Okay, so there's a few things that happen that upset me. First off, right?
The key doesn't work.
The key doesn't work.
After the key said gas thing, right? Gas pump.
So Ben this entire time has been carrying like a torch.
Oh yeah, next to the gas pump.
He sets the torch right next to in between
truck.
the gas pump and the truck. This thing is on fire, just like you're saying, right? There's probably hay inside of the thing. Hay is extremely flammable. So there's a bunch of hay all over the ground. And oh my God, this was like the worst decision, I think, probably like in the movie. It was to put the torch on the ground on the grass.
That is what happened. That's what happened. That's what caused everything to happen.
Well, it was more so other homie.
So then after that, right? Oh hey, the key doesn't work on the lock from the gas pump. Ben's big brain, let me get my rifle and shoot the gas pump. Like, that's another thing, right? That's just wild to me. Why would you shoot the lock on the gas pump? Whatever. And so then I guess like a little bit of the gasoline kind of gets onto the ground or something, right? Because then
he pulls it out and is shooting gasoline like.
Who was it? Tom, right?
Yeah, Tom pulls it out and it's like he's like putting it all over the truck. And
well, you have to remember this was back in the day too, right? Like people couldn't pump their own gas, right? This was still a thing.
Yeah,
I think this is still when
you had to have somebody pump it for
you
you.
needed a professional gas pump.
Yeah, that's
But you wouldn't have that all the time.
Yeah, but since the torch was right there, right? It caught it like he like threw the oil all over the truck and then he dragged it to the torch for some reason. Yeah, and it just
and it started catching on fire. The fucking blaze.
Yeah,
boom! Everything goes up into a blaze. Right?
That was the only reaction I had the whole movie. I was watching it with my girlfriend and literally he's like, oh, we're just like. We're like, bruh. We're like, you know, like it's hard to get a reaction out of a movie, especially an old one like that. But like, from that, I was like, there's no way that actually happened. Yeah.
Oh, that's so good.
We were both literally just in awe. It was crazy.
The truck catches on fire. The gas pump also catches on fire. So then Tom gets into the truck.
Oh, that he's like, drive it off. Get it away.
Judy is still inside.
Yeah.
They get into the truck and they drive off, leaving Ben there.
Yeah.
And then they just like go off into the country, right? I guess they don't need a light anymore because their fucking truck's on fire.
Yeah.
And then they like look at each other, it's like, oh, I love you, whatever. And then fucking
he says to get out. They try to get out. She's like, oh, my jacket's stuck. It's like, take off the jacket. Just take the fucking jacket. He's like, no. They fucking blow. And I was like, that's what.
It was wild.
I was like, that just escalated out of nowhere.
Yeah. And then Ben is basically like fighting off all the zombies just to get back to the house.
I thought he was gonna die right there.
I did too. And then the zombies surround the truck.
Yeah.
And then whatever.
They start eating their dead flesh.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is where I think people were talking about like this is where back in the day it was kind of like what is it, like the rating was really high because this was like a very explicit thing, right? Like they never like really in film didn't show them like eating body parts and body like flesh.
Yeah.
That was a hand, right? That was like a whole ass hand.
Yeah.
A hand and like an intestine, right?
Yeah.
Too?
Yeah, so the zombies are eating them. I think at one point they pull out like a liver, and
Yeah.
it's very flimsy. Yeah, and they're like eating.
And you just hear the sounds too, like
Yeah, the crunchy.
yeah, it's like it's kind of gross.
it's like the zombie ASMR.
So Ben makes it to the house right after fighting off all the zombies, but Cooper closes the door and locks him out.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
this was a stock like turning point of like another
People's, like,
trope.
yeah.
Another trope of like do I
People's breaking points. I
yeah
guess,
breaking
yeah.
points, and for him I think it was a combination of like he didn't want to potentially open it because the zombies might come in,
yeah.
or you know what, I don't like this guy. He's been an issue for me. I can maybe get rid of him. Like
Probably both.
Yeah, and that's the thing. That's a very common thing, right? In most
Yeah.
movies, like when there's that disagreement between two alphas. He's not really an alpha,
Yeah.
but like two conflicting personalities, and like you have a chance of just let it take care of itself.
Yeah,
Right? It's that idea.
yeah.
Like I can let the problem get solved if they just eat him, and nobody will think otherwise.
Yeah.
But he ends up breaking back
Yeah.
in, and then he
breaks
gets
the
big
door,
mad,
breaks the door.
and he does the classic
Yeah.
overdone punch where it goes past his face, and and like he goes down, and then he does it again, right?
Like
Like,
5 times. He just beats him up.
It does.
pretty good. I like old school sound effect punches. Classic.
So after Ben's done beating the crap out of Mr. Cooper, they lock up the house again, and they kind of have like a little bit of a powwow, right, about like what to do or whatever.
Yeah.
And at this point, this is where we find out that Karen, the Cooper's daughter, was bitten.
Oh yeah. They tell her, yeah.
They see the wrap too. They
Yeah.
show
Yeah.
it later. The wrap with the mark on there.
So Barbara starts talking about her car and how it's in the cemetery, but then like they see all the zombies around the house, and they're like,
Yeah.
okay, well that's a no-go, right? Even Ben is like, tell me where your car is.
Yeah.
And she's like, ah,
Yeah.
it's up the road, whatever.
It's all wrecked.
Yeah.
I don't even know where the keys are at this point.
And then we cut to the TV. The radiation is increasing. Ooh.
Yeah.
And this is where they mentioned that militias are starting to pop up and
And
take care of the
Incredible Hulk
problems.
Well, yeah, and like the militias, like are kind of like you're almost like it reminded me of when they show the footage, right? They're showing footage too. It's almost like when people are doing like the searches for people,
Yeah,
like,
exactly,
scattered in
yeah.
giant lines, spread
Yeah.
out, and they all have like their rifles and ammo
Yeah.
and stuff like that. And so I don't know if they show it on film of them actually taking one of them out, but they're basically
think
showing
so,
them
but yeah.
like walking around
Yeah.
and doing that.
Because they also mentioned that you have to destroy the brain
Yeah.
in this
Right.
in this
and
one.
they've talked too about like how it's forming mainly on like their side of the coast, like the
Yeah.
East Coast
Yeah.
countryside, backside, however they refer to it as. But is kind of an important part to note, I guess, too. Another important part that I really thought was cool, because again, looking at it from 2024 brain, whenever they're talking about the daughter getting bit, and that at no point in the movie has there ever been any talk of it being
Infectious.
infectious or a transmittable thing to somebody that's alive, because they only talk about it. They only talk about it being dead, like this the dead coming back, the dead doing this.
But they did say they say I don't know what kind of diseases those things are carrying. They do mention that as a line. That is a line.
But they never talked about like
It actually happened,
being
like,
infectious to a person that's
Yeah.
alive.
Yeah.
Which again, we as people that have seen zombie movies now forever know that like usually
Yeah.
it's always contagious. Like even if you're alive, you'll get bit, it'll like transform you. But every time they've talked about it up to that point was it's the dead, it's the dead, it's the dead. Yeah.
So after they mentioned that the to destroy the brain, pew, the power goes out in the house, and then this is where like things start.
Yeah, this is
Getting
like I think
worse.
this is the last big hoorah, right? Of like, okay, we've had resources up to this point that are nice to have, and now when the electricity's out, this is gonna be bad, because now you have no light to see outside, you have no power to keep up with radio or television that at least would give you more information, so you're kind of now in a no man's land, like you're shut out from the world.
Yeah, and so Cooper goes and has a conversation with his wife Helen, basically saying that he's gonna take the gun from Ben, and
I missed
then and then
Because he knows that's how like he has power. Like they're only listening to him because he has a firearm. Yeah.
Mhm. And then let's see, so then the zombies start to like come back to the house, and they're again them showing like that they're not completely brain dead or something like that. Like they start getting clubs and beating the windows and stuff like that. which I thought was kind of interesting.
Yeah.
And then so Ben calls for Cooper to help board up the windows again and stuff like that. In order to do that, Ben had to put the firearm down on the ground.
Uh-huh.
And so Cooper takes this as an opportunity and grabs the gun. And then, of course, the two of them start ruffling and tussling again until Ben ends up, on top and then
He shoots him
shoots him in the
okay.
chest. Yeah, and I was like, "Ooh, free!"
Not even just once, right? Or not just once, yeah. Just
Yeah.
just
once.
And he was like,
I think this is like when everything kind of starts going to like.
"Going to shit."
yeah, it does, yeah. And then he does the slow descent, like instead of just dropping to the ground like you think he would, he slowly makes his way down the entire basement, walks down the basement to get to his daughter, and that's like his last dying breath is him at his daughter, and then he just kind of turns and falls like
Yeah.
Yeah, there's the Family Guy.
the Peter Griffin, arm behind.
So then Helen.
No, hell yeah, this is where they start getting in.
Oh yeah, they start grabbing her.
They start grabbing her, and but she ends up getting away because she ends up.
Barbara helps her.
Barbara helps
Yeah.
her. She ends up getting away, and then
Helen goes downstairs.
She goes in the basement only to find that surprise, the daughter is eating basically Mr. Cooper eating the dad, and she freaks out and she's like, ah! And of course she just falls down.
Yeah.
Doesn't even do anything, and then she comes over with they call it the cement thing, the thing that for cement where they help you spread it. Yeah. Basically, she just grabs that and just
stabs her with
stabs Helen.
Yeah, like multiple times, like a couple of different times.
And every time there's a scream. Ah!
Yeah.
Ah!
It was a weird scream. Yeah.
Yeah.
It was really.
It's like again, like it's just kind of interesting here too, right? Because like all the other times when we see the zombies fighting people or trying to kill the people, they're using their bare hands or whatever. But here with Karen, we see the cement spreader.
Yeah. It's really weird. It's a really weird premise.
Well, I think for her it was. Again, thinking back to like what their thought process is, maybe for her it's like she wants to get whatever's inside, and the easiest way is to like open it. I don't know. It's kind of I don't know, but like if they can pick up clubs and start using that,
That's what I'm saying. That's like I don't know. I think it's interesting
because they use it on the house, right? They use the clubs on
the brick in the window.
Yeah, he's just like the lazy throw just.
But they never use the weapons on people, except for this one.
Yeah.
But whatever. So then Karen, unalives her mom. Ben is upstairs. He's trying to save Barbara because Barbara got grabbed by the zombies. I think she's at the front door, right, trying to hold it or something like that. And that doesn't really help.
It comes down, right? The door comes
down. It comes down, and then the zombies start getting in. And guess who's the first one we see?
Well, and it looked like she might have a fighting chance, but yeah, like you're saying, you see the driving gloves of her brother, the leather ones, and that reaches in, and as soon as she sees that, she turns and looks, and it's Johnny, and she basically kind of gives up like her defenses, like she can't fight anymore because she sees him and it just throws her off.
Yeah. So then Johnny pulls her in, and the horde of zombies just basically takes her.
Take her away.
Yeah, they take her away. So then Ben, he backs
to the cellar.
Yeah, he goes into the cellar and he closes the thing, right? Like he locks it up or whatever, and then he backs into Karen, right? And then doesn't he like throw?
Oh yeah, he throws her, and then like.
He was upstairs, right. And he bumps into her. Yeah, he like picks her up and throws her on the couch, and then like walks away.
Then he walks away to the cellar, closing the door behind him. And then the zombies at this point start to like beat down the door, or at least they try to. They're basically trying to get in. Ben turns around, he sees Cooper dead, and then he starts to get up, right, Mr. Cooper, and then Ben's like, I'll do it again. Bah!
Yeah, I'll do it again.
And then Helen, we already know what's gonna happen, right? She comes back from the dead, and then he pops a cap in her. And then Ben hears the zombies upstairs or whatever, and I think it pretty much just cuts next day.
And so when it cuts to next day, I think it starts with outside, right? Like it's showing that the militia made its way to that area and is like just kind of clearing out the farm or whatever, and there's a main guy giving orders, kind of almost like Mr. Cooper vibes, like he's just kind of like, he's like the lead man, sheriff, has like a whole like gun belt with like thick rounds too, like not even just like regular, like thick rounds. He's just ordering people to do this, do that, whatever. And they have the dogs with them, right? They're searching out the different, if there's people alive or if there's other zombies. Like they're just basically front line just slowly clearing essentially. And they get to the house. Ben Starley, I think, realizes no more sound up there. Starts kind of
gunshots.
Gunshots. So he starts basically opening and trying to go out.
The gunshots are the cops unaliving zombies.
Yeah,
unaliving zombies.
So they take them out, and so he slowly starts making his way upstairs. And just I think to just quickly recap, I mean, essentially they're taking no prisoners and they're just shooting first and asking questions later.
Yeah.
And so you think this might be a happy ending, that he might get away, and he starts peeking through the window, and unfortunately they mistake him for a zombie because somebody's like, hey, I heard rustling in there, and pretty quick aim too. Like I feel like
just 360 no scope.
Yeah, he's essentially like was able to aim, see him through the window, and before he could react, like if I saw a bunch of people with guns, I probably would be like, hey, I'm alive in here.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, before he could do that, they take the shot. He kind of was stumbling too. He injured himself when he went downstairs, I think. I can't remember what happened, but his leg was weird. So I think kind of that too, maybe when they saw the shuffling in there, it was a little staggered. So they just took the shot instead of checking. And that was, I think, the one thing that I hated seeing, only because too, like, I would think you're going to have to go inside and clear the house anyways, which they do. And instead of waiting to check and see, they just straight up like, let's just shoot before we go in there. Because there could be other things in there too. Why not just wait, open the door, scoot back because you have the militia, and then wait for them to clear out. And
they didn't even have to open the door. The door was open.
Yeah. So it's just like frustrating that like that happened, but so Ben got taken out pretty easily.
Yeah.
And it was a good shot too. That guy even said like, "Hey man, good shot." Like that was really good because he's pretty far away. I would say like 20 yards into the yard to the window.
Something like that.
And then from there, right between the eyes, they freeze frame. They show Ben down, and then from there. They kind of do like some eerie music where they could have just stopped and did credits, which they kind of do, but basically they start showing like snapshots of like the scene, and it's basically them, how they dispose of the bodies. They essentially gather all the bodies, they put them in one pile, they get like meat hooks from like, the ice houses, so it's like the ones that have like you grip them with like the, like a handle, and then it has the hook coming out, so it kind of gives Texas Chainsaw vibes. They basically meat hook them and they drag them out. So they show like them finding Ben, them putting the meat hook in Ben. That's a snapshot of them pulling him out, and then a snapshot of him starting the pile, and then them lighting the pile on fire. And then that's how the movie ends, which kind of sucks because like gives Miss vibes. Like he could have survived, and you think he has hope if like they would have maybe figured out 1 or 2 seconds longer. If he would have waited just a little bit longer, they might have survived. But he got overzealous, looked out the window, and they took him out. Yeah, which sucked. That was the movie.
But that was Night of the Living Dead. Closing thoughts, Adam?
I really like older movies and media, and like I can kind of turn off a little bit the thought of like, little things of like older stuff, like kind of being outdated. Like I can kind of put that to the side because I do enjoy shows and movies like that. Again, Twilight Zone especially. Like I love it. I could see this being a Twilight Zone episode, like this in itself with zombies and things. Obviously, there's a lot more gore there than what you would show in the Twilight Zone. But seeing some of the different things that were pulled from this movie, I thought was really interesting. Like the whole idea of like this was a very political movie of like a reflection of consumerism, a reflection of like people, not like the government and things not being able to handle a mass crisis like this. We just don't have things in place that could solve these issues. And then the other big one they had talked about was just this was not the first of its kind, but a very big one of its kind that really started the story. Well, not the zombies, but like the idea and the trope of like we as people have our worst instincts whenever things like this occur. Like if this were to happen, we probably wouldn't survive because our base instincts would kick in, and we're like as humans very flawed, and like our worst instincts are the things that are going to kick in when things like this happen. So you have the power struggles that don't need to be power struggles. You have the non-rational decision making, like putting the fire torch down by the gas pump. You have the gas thing.
Whatever Tom did.
And I'm trying to think. There was another point that like was made that like looking back at it now, I was like, okay, I could see that. It's escaping me, but I just think it was a good movie. There's a reason why the Library of Congress has it as one of its like movies that they set aside and like you can watch for free and doing all this stuff because it had such a huge impact on like the horror genre. And I think that it definitely is one of a kind. Like you can't remake that type of like great cinema like because it just like it was when it happened it was innovative, right? Yeah. And everything after that is just playing off of like the tropes and trying to have their own creative twist on it. And I think it's really cool. It's nice being able to watch a movie like that and enjoy it and know that like this is like you get to see something that like is history making, like is really cool. Mm-hmm. But I just really enjoyed the movie.
Justin, closing thoughts?
It's cool.
It's cool.
It's cool. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's fine. So closing thoughts for myself, you can definitely tell that like a bunch of stuff came from here, right? Not even only like zombie stuff, but like, well, I don't know how much of the power struggle originated from this movie between Cooper and Ben, but we could see it in like other places too, right? Like I'm pretty sure there's
always somebody. Everybody wants to be the leader. Somebody always wants to be the leader. And you're going to have other people that are cool with being the followers. And then, like, they didn't do it this round because I think, or not that they didn't do this round, but there was not as many people, so it didn't really play a factor. But the twist on it, right, is the
dividing factions.
The dividing factions, right? Where that's what usually undoes everything is when people divide, they fall. Like, that's the big trope that usually occurs.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, so overall, I can definitely appreciate what this movie had done for cinema later on. And everything else that followed it. But yeah.
What would be, I guess this could be another topic, what would be your favorite zombie movie that like was also, you thought was cool and innovative that like would be later on down the road? Like
today's?
I mean, it could be any, like what would be your next interesting zombie movie that had like interesting cool things along with it?
Warm Bodies.
Warm Bodies.
I don't know what really reinvents the genre.
I would say reinvents, but maybe just like it was also really innovative. Like maybe not innovative is the wrong word. Maybe creative. It was just it had some cool creative things that went along with it.
I think the only thing that comes to mind, like off the top of my head, I don't even think I saw the movie. It was World War Z.
Or was he
like the horde mentality where they would just do anything to get to like whatever they wanted, so they would pile on top of each other, and that was more hive mind than like I thought it was interesting, but again I don't know the whole movie. I don't remember it if I did see it, but
they like infected themselves with, or the survivors like infected themselves with something. I don't remember what it was, but some virus thing that they could survive, but then it basically turned off the zombies from sensing them.
Oh,
or something like that.
I would say it is, and
it's a pretty good.
I wouldn't say it's not hive mind, but like leader mind, and that there is some control and there's some ability to communicate. Was and I know it's a silly one that is not too old that just came out recently. Was Army of the Dead.
So that was Out of the Living Dead. Justin, the next movie is your pick. What are we going to watch for the next movie?
Since there's nothing that seems interesting coming out in theaters in these next few weeks, I think we're just going to continue the trend of old movies, and we'll go with Killer Clowns from Outer Space. Kind of bump it up.
Is that our first comedy horror?
I think so.
Yeah.
Unless you want to count Imaginary, right?
Now let's come out comedy horror. You know what's funny? Somebody on Facebook posted that like, "Hey, nobody's talking about this movie. What do y'all think?" And I was just like, "That movie's bad." It was funny, but it was bad.
Yeah.
Okay, so tune in next time where we're going to go ahead and talk about Killer Clowns from Outer Space. Go ahead, like, comment, subscribe, do all the algorithm stuff. We'll really appreciate it. And then you'll get notified when our next video comes out. But until then, y'all have a nice day.